What's up with it? You watching the Big Bomber TV. And yeah, we about to check out this video from the YouTube channel Rap Thread. And the title is At 33 Years Old, Finesse2Tymes Life is More Tragic Than You Think. Yeah, man, that's a fool with it, man. I've been following Finesse situation, man, and it definitely seemed a little tragic, man. They got that boy in a real bad record deal, man. And I ain't gonna lie, man, I don't even think it's a 360. They hit that boy with a figure 8, man, for real, though. Yeah, man, there's been a lot of dudes trying to help Finesse, man, with no success, for real. Even dudes with deep pockets. Yeah, man, I don't know what kind of deal he signed, man, but it seems like mob ties ain't letting up, man, for real. Like, you ain't going nowhere, man. Yeah, man, I haven't checked out the video. Don't completely know what they talking about, but let's check it out and see what they talking about.
And new at midday, court documents show Memphis rapper Finesse2Tymes and his girlfriend Sugar were both arrested in Texas. Here's a look at their mugshots. Finesse2Tymes' legal name is Ricky Hampton. He faces possession charges for substances, including marijuana.
When you name yourself Finesse2Tymes, the universe has a twisted sense of humor because eventually life starts finessing you right back. And that's exactly what's happening to one of Memphis's hottest exports right now. At just 33 years old, this man went from viral sensation to courtroom defendant.
The rapper who performed at the nightclub in Little Rock, Arkansas Saturday morning was arrested on unrelated charges in this mass shooting that happened there. Ricky Hampton of Memphis, Tennessee, was taken into custody on a fugitive warrant out of Forest City, Arkansas. But so far, no arrests have been made in the shooting at the Power Ultra Lounge.
From packed arenas to nobody picking up the phone when his team calls to book a show. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse for him, he just lost a 6-figure lawsuit to a promoter he tried to run game on. 6 figures. Gone. Money he doesn't even have. This is the story of how a man who built his whole brand around the finesse game, trust me, it's more tragic than anything you've seen on his Instagram. Now, before we get into all of that, we got to understand who Finesse2Tymes actually is. Because if you only know him from the internet clips and the viral moments, you're missing a much bigger picture. This isn't just a rapper who fell off. This is a man whose whole life has been one long, painful uphill climb against the streets, against the system, against the industry, and now against the courts. And at 33, he's fighting all of those battles simultaneously with no safety net underneath him. No cap. When you lay it all out chronologically and see how every chapter connects to the next, it hits completely different. Because this could have gone so many other ways, but here's what really went down. Let's rewind all the way back to Memphis, Tennessee. If you know anything about Memphis, you already know it ain't for the soft. This is a city that's produced some of the most raw, unfiltered, authentic voices in the history of hip-hop. 3 6 Mafia built an entire subgenre out of that city's energy. Young Dolph turned street credibility into a business empire before his life was tragically cut short. Yo Gotti built one of the most consistent careers in rap by never pretending to be anything other than exactly where he came from. Memphis has always operated on its own frequency, its own tempo, its own code. And Finesse2Tymes, born Ricky Hampton, came up in that exact environment. He wasn't performing in school talent shows dreaming about a record deal. He wasn't the kid in the suburbs who discovered rap through YouTube and decided he wanted to be famous. He was living the life that he would eventually rap about, and that's both the thing that made his music so undeniably real and the thing that kept pulling him back into situations that had nothing to do with music. There's a tension that a lot of Memphis artists carry between the world that made them and the world they're trying to build through their art. That tension is what makes the music authentic, but it's also what makes the journey so treacherous. Growing up in Memphis,
I ain't gonna lie, man, he got all his reputation and all that, man, and the Princes don't care, man, for real, though. Because how the Princes been doing that way, man, it seemed like they ain't got no respect for him, man. I think it's kind of hard to see somebody as a G if dudes playing with him like that, man, for real.
Ricky Hampton saw everything the streets had to offer, and not the glamorized version, the real version. The version where the consequences aren't a punchline or a flex. There's something you carry with you every single day. The kind of environment where the pressure on a young man to make money by any means available isn't some abstract concept, it's the actual reality of survival. That shaped him in ways that no amount of success was ever going to fully undo. But it also gave him a perspective that you cannot buy and cannot fake. When Finesse rapped about the street life, he wasn't pulling from imagination or other people's stories. He was pulling from his own chest. And listeners feel that difference immediately, even if they can't always articulate why. Now, here's something people don't talk about enough when it comes to Finesse2Tymes. The music didn't come easy, and the come up wasn't overnight. This wasn't a situation where he posted one song on SoundCloud and woke up famous. He was putting in years of work behind the scenes before the general public ever heard his name, recording in whatever studio time he could access, building a local reputation show by show, getting the city behind him the hard way by consistently showing up and delivering, by being visible in the culture, by letting the music speak for itself without a machine behind it pushing it forward. Memphis is one of those places where the local cosign matters more than almost anywhere else. The city has a long memory and a sharp eye for authenticity. You cannot fake your way into real Memphis love. The people there will check you on it publicly and without apology. So when Finesse started getting that organic city support, when the local tastemakers started putting him on, when his name started coming up in conversations about who was really keeping the Memphis tradition alive, that was earned. That wasn't manufactured. And earned credibility in Memphis travels. It crosses into other southern markets. It gets the attention of blogs and curators who know that Memphis artists don't get put on unless they're legitimate. His style was undeniable too. That Memphis cadence, the slow rolling delivery that somehow still hits with impact, the storytelling that puts you directly in the scene rather than just describing it from the outside.
I ain't gonna lie, man. If he generated the big buzz like that, Rihanna label, man, why he even signed to a label? For real, though, man. I think some dudes just be signing because they just want more exposure or whatever. But a lot of the times, man, these dudes can be successful on their own, man. For real, though. Just need a good plan or something. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. I think dudes don't be knowing they worth sometimes, man. That's why we got to give Dolph props, man. For real. He built his own empire, for real.
The kind of music that sounds like it was made specifically for late nights when the weight of the world is sitting on your shoulders. That's not a style you can learn from watching other people. That's a style that comes from living a specific kind of life in a specific kind of place. And Finesse had it naturally. He could paint a picture with words. He could make you feel the texture of the environment he was describing. And the music landscape flooded with artists chasing whatever trend is currently dominating the charts. That kind of rootedness stands out like a signal in static. The records started connecting, first locally, then regionally. Then the algorithm started doing what it does when the engagement is real. It found new audiences who had never engaged with Memphis rap outside of the classics their older relatives played. And those new audiences connected immediately because the music didn't need translation. Struggle translates, authenticity translates, and Finesse2Tymes was rapping about both with a specificity that made everything feel lived in, because it absolutely was. But here's where it gets crazy, because just as the music was starting to gain that real national traction, life kept throwing them curveballs, and not the kind you can dodge by being smart or being careful. The kind that come from a past that doesn't let go easily. See, here's the thing about Finesse2Tymes that separates his story from a standard rapper gets famous narrative. This man was in and out of jail before most people outside of Memphis even knew his name. And we're not talking about one arrest, one situation that got blown out of proportion by media coverage. We're talking about a recurring cycle, multiple stints, a pattern that kept interrupting his trajectory at the worst possible moments, right when the momentum was building, right when the opportunities were starting to materialize into something real and tangible. He called cases, multiple drug charges, weapons charges, the kind of legal situations that come with living too close to the streets for too long. And each time he went away, the damage wasn't just the time lost sitting in a cell, it was everything that unraveled around him while he was gone. Think about what actually happens to an independent artist's career when they go silent for months at a stretch. The fans who were just discovering him migrate to whoever dropped something new that week. The playlist placements evaporate because the algorithm needs a steady flow of new content to justify keeping someone visible. The potential collaboration.
I ain't gonna lie, man. That's kind of cap, man. You know, once you go to jail and get out, man, it's up from there, man. You know what I mean? You a little more lit than you was when you got locked up. So, yeah, man, I think jail be benefiting dudes sometimes, but it kind of depends on how long they went down for. You know what I'm saying? I think anything under 5 years or something, man, a rapper can bounce back, man, and probably become bigger than they ever was, for real. But with him being stagnated or whatever, man, could see that leading to a bad decision like signing the mob ties, man, for real.
That were being discussed informally died quietly. because nobody is going to wait indefinitely for an artist who isn't available. The A&R conversations that were starting to gain traction get shelved because labels cannot invest in an artist whose availability they can't count on. Every single arrest wasn't just a pause button on his career. It was a reset button that dropped him further back than where he started each time. And the cruel irony is that the talent never went anywhere. Every time Finesse2Tymes came home, the ability was still intact. The voice was still there. The pen was still sharp. The charisma that made people lean forward when he performed was still fully present. But the industry doesn't wait for talent. The industry follows momentum. And momentum, once broken that many times, is genuinely difficult to rebuild without serious resources and the right people in your corner. Every time Finesse came home from a bid, he wasn't just returning to where he left off. He was returning to a music industry that had moved a full season forward without him. Trends had shifted. The artists who were up and coming when he went in were now established. The playlist that had started featuring his music had moved on. The conversations about who was next out of Memphis now included names that weren't in those discussions when he went away. And he had to figure out how to re-enter that landscape without looking like he was chasing it. Because nothing kills a street rapper's credibility faster than visibly trying too hard to stay relevant. That tightrope walk, staying authentic to who you are while also adapting enough to remain current, is one of the hardest things any artist can manage in this era. And doing it repeatedly after multiple stints with no consistent team around you to strategize the returns is nearly impossible to execute cleanly. The inconsistency that his arrest record forced on his career is something that most industry observers dramatically underestimate when they try to assess why he isn't further along than his talent should have taken him. And then there's the emotional dimension that rarely makes it into these conversations. Imagine building something from scratch, watching it grow, getting close enough to touch the version of success you've been working towards your whole life, and then having it interrupted, then rebuilding, getting close again, and having it interrupted again. At some point, that cycle stops just being frustrating and starts becoming something that affects how you see yourself, how you see the future, how much you're willing to trust that the work you're putting in right now is actually going to lead somewhere stable. That psychological erosion is real. It doesn't show up on a streaming chart. It doesn't show up in the booking report, but it absolutely shows up in the decisions a person makes when they're operating from a place of accumulated defeat. But then, and this is where the story shifts, Finesse2Tymes finally got his moment. His real, undeniable, cannot scroll past this moment. Songs started connecting in a way that went beyond Memphis, beyond the South, beyond the usual regional borders that contain most street rap artists. The internet caught on in a way that changes things permanently. Clips started going viral. Comment sections started filling up with people who had never heard of him 3 months prior, acting like they'd been rocking with him for years. The energy was there. The charisma translated through a phone screen. And for the first time, everything he'd been building through all the setbacks and restarts felt like it was about to pay off at the scale it always deserved. That kind of buzz catches specific attention. And it caught the attention of someone very specific. J. Prince, Rap-A-Lot Records, Mob Ties. If you know anything about the real history of hip-hop, not the surface level stuff, but the behind the scenes infrastructure that actually made the culture what it is, you know exactly who J. Prince is. This is a man who helped architect the careers of Scarface, UGK, Bun B, and a roster of artists who defined an entire era of Southern rap. A man whose influence in both the music industry and the streets runs so deep that his name alone opens doors that most people in this business will never even get close to. When J. Prince puts his stamp on you, it carries a weight that goes beyond any record deal. It's a statement about who you are and where you belong in the hierarchy of this culture. And you have to understand what that moment must have meant for Finesse2Tymes specifically. Here's a man who came from nothing, who fought through years of grinding with no major support, who went in and out of jail and rebuilt from scratch multiple times, who never had the industry infrastructure that artists from more privileged backgrounds take for granted.
I ain't gonna lie, man. J. Prince name definitely hold weight, man. But if you go back in history, man, and look at his artists, man, most of his artists not rich no more, man. You know what I mean? I think Scarface net worth like 200,000 or 300,000 or something like that, man. And you know, Scarface like the real king of the South, man. So millions and millions of records, man. I don't see how he not filthy rich, man. For real. Me personally, man, I wouldn't want to sign a Rap-A-Lot, man. For real.
And now one of the most legendary and powerful figures in the history of street music is saying he sees something worth investing in. That's not just a business transaction, that's validation at the deepest, most personal level. Of course you're signing. Of course the excitement in that moment drowns out the voice that would normally tell you to slow down, get a lawyer, read every single line. You're not thinking about revenue splits and exit clauses. You're thinking about what this cosign changes for your career and your family. The deal that Finesse2Tymes signed with Mob Ties was reportedly a 360 deal. For anybody who doesn't know what that means in practice, let me break it down properly. A standard recording contract is already a significant commitment. The label takes a percentage of your music revenue in exchange for funding your recording, handling distribution, and putting marketing resources behind your releases. A 360 deal rewrites that arrangement entirely. In a 360 deal, the label's financial interest extends to every single revenue stream an artist generates, not just the music, but touring income, merchandise sales, brand endorsements, acting work, appearances, sponsorships. Every dollar that flows through the artist's career in any form, the label has a contractual claim on a percentage of it. Labels justify 360 deals by arguing that their investment in developing an artist creates value across all those revenue streams.
That's crazy because he already had a buzz, was already developed, man. Yeah, man, he should have been getting more like a partnership or something. He should have been signing no 360, man, because he was already building this image, already had music out and everything, man. So he really played this self signing that deal, man.
Technically, that argument has some logic, but the reality for artists who sign these deals without fully understanding the terms is that they can be generating what looks like significant revenue from the outside while actually keeping a fraction of it themselves. You can have songs with millions of streams and sold out show dates and still be struggling financially because the structure of what you sign means most of that money was already spoken for before it reached a bank account.
Your YouTube
which brings us back to the timing of that deal because it matters. Finesse came into that negotiation at a moment when he finally had the buzz, but when his history had also left him financially behind where he should have been. He didn't have savings built up from the earlier years because those years kept getting interrupted. He didn't have a management team with enough leverage to push back on unfavorable terms. He had momentum, a hot name, and real need. That combination of excitement and financial pressure is exactly how artists end up agreeing to terms that a calmer, more secure version of themselves would have walked away from. The 360 deal became a ceiling on everything he could build. When the checks started coming in and the math didn't add up to what he expected, the motivation to keep grinding within those constraints naturally eroded. Why pour everything into a rollout when the financial return gets filtered through a structure that wasn't built in your favor? That's not laziness. That's a rational response to a situation that doesn't reward effort the way effort deserves to be rewarded. And that response, that slow withdrawal of full investment, is what produced the slowing releases, the reduced promotional activity, and the booking situation that followed. The shows started drying up. Not all at once. That's not how this works. It was gradual, like a slow leak you don't notice until the tire is flat. The headlining slots at venues with real capacity got replaced with supporting roles at smaller events. The fees dropped, then certain markets stopped calling altogether. Promoters run numbers before they book anyone. And when an artist's social media engagement starts plateauing, when new music rollouts slow down, when legal headlines keep attaching themselves to his name in search results, the risk calculation changes.
You know, them labels get to calling around, man. Hey, don't deal with him, man. Or you gonna have a problem with us, you know what I'm saying? Or we ain't cool no more. So yeah, man, it ain't uncommon for record labels to put pressure on the DJs and everything, man. And then we know how the Prince's been moving, so you know they applying pressure, man. When it come down to the DJs or whatever, man, they don't want no problems. It ain't really worth it to them, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, these shady deals ain't nothing new though, man. I will say business is business, man. You gotta read them contracts. But it's still a cold deal, though.
Promoters start choosing the safer option, even if the talent isn't comparable. The compounding effect of all of it created a scenario where the infrastructure of his career was quietly deteriorating, even while he was still culturally relevant enough that people assumed everything was fine. And that gap between public perception and private reality is one of the most painful places to exist as an artist. Everyone on the outside sees the clout. Only you know that the clout isn't converting into stability the way it should be. Here's where things get real wild. And this is the chapter that went public in the worst possible way. A promoter came through with a booking, negotiated terms, paid money to bring Finesse2Tymes in to headline an event. Standard transaction, you agree on the fee, the promoter builds marketing and ticket sales around your name, you show up, perform, everyone gets what they came for. Except it didn't work that way. What allegedly happened was that Finesse2Tymes collected the booking money and then didn't show up. But this wasn't a standard no-show. The situation reportedly involved sending his brother to the event in his place. His brother, not the artist whose name was on every flyer, whose face was in every promotional post, whose draw was the entire reason people bought tickets. Think about every person whose night was affected by that decision. The fans who showed up specifically for Finesse, the promoter who had money tied up in every aspect of production. All of it built on a foundation that someone decided to pull out from under everybody. The promoter lawyered up and filed suit. The damages they sought reflected the full scope of the fallout, not just the booking fee, but the marketing costs, the ticket refund liability, the lost projected revenue, and the reputational damage that comes with having your event implode publicly in your market. Independent promoters don't have corporate balance sheets to absorb losses like that. The court sided with the promoter, six-figure judgment against Finesse2Tymes on the record. Public, permanent, and he cannot pay it. The music revenue after Mob Ties takes their percentage isn't generating that cash flow. The bookings have slowed to the point where show money isn't filling the gap. And that judgment is sitting there accruing interest, capable of intercepting any meaningful income the moment his revenue picks back up. It's a trap that closes tighter the longer it goes unresolved. At 33 years old, that is the weight Ricky Hampton is carrying. Multiple chapters of legal history, a record deal that limits what he can actually build from his own music, a booking market that has cooled significantly, and a six-figure civil judgment on top of all of it. People online say he brought it on himself, and the accountability is real. The promoter situation was a choice with real victims, and the court made that clear. But if that's where the analysis stops, you're missing the larger story about what this industry does to artists who enter it without protection. There is a direct line between signing a 360 deal you didn't fully understand and eventually making a desperate financial decision. There is a direct line between having your career interrupted by jail multiple times with no infrastructure to preserve what you built and reaching a point where your judgment is compromised by pressure. These aren't excuses, they're context. The music industry has always been structured to benefit the people who already have leverage over the people coming in with nothing but talent. The Mob Ties contract is enforceable. The court judgment is valid. All of it is above board. None of it was designed with Ricky Hampton's long-term interests as the priority. That's the real tragedy.
Yeah, man, that's a fool with it, man. Seemed like he was desperate when he signed that deal, man. It seemed like he didn't even need to sign that deal if he was already generating a buzz, you know what I mean? Sometimes that slow nickel better than that quick dollar, man, for real, though. But yeah, man, this situation do seem a little tragic, man. I was saying, man, there was a lot of people trying to get him out that deal with deep pockets, man. That Ray J Prince been turning dudes down, man. So I don't know what kind of money they generating off of him, man. They must be generating a lot because they don't want to let him go, man. But yeah, man, let me know what y'all think about this video in the comments, man. Like, share, and subscribe. You rocking the Babe Mama TV. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. Until next time. All right.